Good evening. You're tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Farhana Sheikh. Securities Commission seeks further explanation from MACC Chief Commissioner on shares purchased. And in anticipation for GE15, what can we expect in the political landscape in 2022? That's coming up. The Securities Commission will be in touch with the parties involved, including MACC's Chief Commissioner, Tan Sri Azam Baki, for an explanation to his share trading account used by his brother Nasir to purchase shares in 2015. As he said, under Section 25 of the CICDA Act 1991, every securities account opened with a central depository must be in the name of the beneficial owner or in the name of an authorized nominee. In addition, Section 29A of the Act stipulates that all dealings in securities shall be effected only by the beneficial owner of the securities or an authorized nominee, the Commission said in a statement today. The Anti-Corruption Advisory Board, LPPR, one of the 5 independent monitoring bodies of the MACC, announced that it has found no criminal conduct or conflict of interest involving Azam's share trading done in 2015. LPPR Chairman Tan Sri Abu Zahar Ujang said yesterday that the board, in a special meeting on November 24, 2021, had sought Azam's explanation over the matter, and the latter explained that his share trading account was used by his brother Nasir to purchase shares in 2015. Abu Zahar said the purchase of the shares was made in the open market with no conflict of interest and that the shares were transferred to Nasir within the same year. Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin said the single biggest source of imported cases of the COVID-19 Omicron variant or otherwise was from Saudi Arabia. Malaysia has detected 245 cases of the variant in the country so far, with 157 of the cases involved returning Umrah pilgrims. Khairi added that the suspension of Umrah travel from January 8th would continue for a month for risk assessment purposes. His ministry predicted that the caseload could jump to 15,000 if action such as a temporary Umrah travel ban is not implemented. He reminded pilgrims who have just returned from Umrah that they must undergo quarantine at designated hotels or government-run quarantine centres. Meanwhile, the Health Ministry and other relevant agencies would also update the SOPs for Umrah travellers, noting that it would be mandatory for pilgrims to have a booster dose. 123 new Omicron cases have been detected in the country today. 88 were pilgrims returning from Saudi Arabia after performing Umrah. Meanwhile, Khairi also assured Malaysians that the country will not return to a total lockdown to prevent the spread of COVID-19 following the emergence of the highly transmissible Omicron variant.
Seboleh mungkin kita bergerak ke hadapan. Kita tidak toleh ke belakang. Sebab itu saya kata don't mention the L word. Lockdown itu kita toleh ke belakang. Go start habis. We want to avoid that. Tan Sri dengan saya memang we want to avoid that. Of course, you lock down, you get 0 cases, you win. But at what cost? Economy, mental health, well-being, semua terkesan. Jadi, as much as possible, our response is targeted, calibrated, and proportionate.
The Health Ministry has also given conditional approval to inoculate children between 5 and 11 years old with Pfizer-BioNTech's Comirnaty vaccine. Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Nur Hisham Abdullah said the decision was made following a meeting held by the Drug Control Authority today. Dr. Nur Hisham said this group of children will be given 10 microgram of the Comirnaty vaccine, which is a smaller dose compared with the same vaccine given to those aged 12 and above. Health Minister Khairi Jamaluddin said the ministry today has also formed the COVID-19 Immunization Task Force Children, CITFC, to coordinate the COVID-19 vaccination program for children. Meanwhile, conditional approval was also given for ConSino Biologics single-dose Convidecia vaccine to be given as booster shots to individuals aged 18 and above, with an interval of 3 to 6 months after receiving the first dose of the same vaccine. We'll go for a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. With the emergence of several new political parties, voters will now be presented with more choices than ever. What can be expected, especially with talks that the 15 general elections could be called as early as this year? We speak to the CEO of the Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs Ideas, Trisha Yeo.
More parties are being formed. I think we just saw indeed a new political party being launched just as recently as last month. So the splintering of parties, the splintering of votes, all this will mean that gone are the days of a dominant, one single dominant party that rules in national level politics. And what this means is you will have a possibly different coalition set up at the federal and at the state levels. So meaning that this is something that you saw happening early on post-Sheraton move, where the different state governments actually were led by slightly different coalitions. There was a very small window of time during which Parti Bersatu was in coalition with Pakatan Harapan, but then this quickly changed after. But my point is that this opens up windows of opportunities for parties to actually become a little bit more decentralized. I'm not sure whether this will be an immediate outcome because parties like the government in Malaysia are still highly centralized, where decision-making takes place at the center. But this is something for the parties to actually think about. Not having to have all the decisions made at the center, whether state governments and states coalitions can actually be cobbled together in ways that are more advantageous to them in their specific regions, as opposed to having to be aligned always with the same coalition that takes place in the center.
Therefore, will a fragmented political landscape impact economic recovery in the country negatively? According to Trisha, it may not necessarily be the case.
Economic recovery, there are many, many elements to that. I think as long as our fundamentals are strong, as long as investors can see that the expenditure that Malaysia is putting forward is going to productive purposes, meaning that the money that is being spent will be productively used for certain infrastructure, laying the ground for long-term investments like education and health. That's where the investor confidence will come in. This is where I like to tie it back to institutional independence and political stability. If a fragmented government can still produce political stability, this is actually all that business people want to have. All businesses need to know is that, okay, the rules are not going to change, not change overnight. There is some predictability in the way that regulatory enforcement or rules are being made to their businesses. Then they will continue to operate and they will feel confident in coming back to the country. So what I'm saying is that we should not necessarily tie the political fragmentation to economic instability.
Trisha believes policy stability is key in economic recovery.
So the key here is policy stability and policy harmony, right? Then I believe that it will be possible to have that economic recovery. Of course, there are multiple tracks to economic recovery. You need to think about investments into new industries, whether the digitalization policies and the infrastructure are going to be rolled out well. You need to think about social security. And I know that there's been recently a lot of discussion over EPF and whether EPF withdrawals should be permitted for victims of the flood. But all this means that the institutionalization of economic recovery, investing into new business, new digital policies, and the infrastructure to support that, as well as having a more secure social security system. These are some of the foundations that will be important as we look at economic recoveries.
On the international front, the Italian government has approved a measure requiring people older than 50 years old to be vaccinated against COVID-19. This as the country struggles with nearly daily new records of fresh infections fueled by the Omicron variant.
The cabinet voted unanimously to impose the mandate as the country hits a new high of almost 190,000 new infections on Wednesday. Health Minister Roberto Speranza said that anyone 50 or older will be checked to see if they have a super green pass before they enter their workplaces. Italy's green pass is reserved to those who are fully vaccinated or have recently recovered from COVID-19. Currently, vaccination is made mandatory for school teachers, healthcare workers, members of the military and police forces, regardless of age.
Australia and Japan leaders signed a historic defence treaty today. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said this would increase security and stability in the Indo-Pacific region.
The treaty, dubbed the Reciprocal Access Agreement, or RAA, was signed during a virtual summit between Morrison and Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida on Thursday. It is only Japan's second such agreement. This took place as China expands its military and economic clout in the region. The pact will facilitate joint exercises, faster deployment of Japanese and Australian military personnel, as well as ease restrictions on the transportation of weapons and supplies for joint training and disaster relief operations.
Tennis world champion Novak Djokovic fought against deportation from Australia today after the government revoked his visa for failing to meet entry requirements. The Serbian athlete will spend at least 72 hours in a Melbourne hotel before the next hearing to overturn a ban on entering the country on Monday.
According to the Australian Border Force, Djokovic was denied entry late yesterday because he had applied for the wrong type of visa for someone with a medical exemption. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Scott Morrison defended the country's strict border rules, saying Djokovic's visa was cancelled because he failed to meet requirements for an exemption to COVID-19 vaccination rules.
Rules are rules, and there are no special cases. Rules are rules. It's what I said to you yesterday. That's the policy of the government and has been our government's strong border protection policies, and particularly in relation to the pandemic, that has ensured that Australia has one of the lowest death rates from COVID anywhere in the world.
The top-ranked Serbian flew in after previously receiving the exemption by the Victorian state government. The exemption was an alternative to having proof of being fully vaccinated against COVID-19.
Will the recent GPS victory and formation of the Sarawak government consolidate the political dynamics in the territory? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to political scientist Professor James Chin about the trajectory of state nationalism as well as issues of good governance. That is all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. For all the latest news updates, head on to astroawani.com and Astro Awani app. Thank you for watching and we'll see you again.